She had the face of a goddess, the body of a dream, and the allure that made men abandon their wives and directors rewrite their scripts. Yet the woman behind the name Kim Novak never wanted any of it. While Hollywood painted her as the next Monroe, the next Hayworth, the next big fantasy, she was silently screaming, "I'm not her, I'm me!" Behind those icy blue eyes and platinum curls was a woman being sculpted, sold, and suffocated by a machine that didn't care if she was happy, only if she was beautiful. She wasn't just acting on screen, she was performing her survival. At the height of her fame, she vanished. No press release, no farewell, no scandal. She simply walked away. But why would a woman at the peak of her power choose silence over stardom? What had Hollywood done to her? And what secrets did she take with her into the shadows? This is the untold story of Kim Novak. She arrived in Hollywood not like a spark, but like a storm. With her platinum blonde hair cascading over her shoulders like liquid silk, full lips that curved into a knowing smile, and those hypnotic sea glass eyes, Kim Novak didn't enter the silver screen. She possessed it. Born as Marilyn Pauline Novak on February 13, 1933 in Chicago, Illinois, the daughter of Czech immigrants, she was supposed to live a modest life. Her father worked on the railroad, her mother in a factory. No stage. No spotlight, just survival. But when Columbia Pictures discovered her in the early 1950s, working as a model for refrigerator ads, they saw something else. Not Marilyn, not Pauline, but the studio's desperate answer to Marilyn Monroe. Columbia didn't just sign her, they redesigned her. Her name became Kim. Her voice became softer, her laugh rehearsed, her sensuality manufactured for magazine covers, and the world drank it in. She burst into fame with Picnic, 1955, stealing the screen from seasoned actors with just a glance. Pal Joey, 1957, cemented her as a seductive siren. But it was Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, 1958, that immortalized her in film history. As Madeline Elster, the mysterious, tragic double, Kim became the ultimate cinematic illusion. Beauty, tragedy, and obsession wrapped into one. Critics called her the icy blonde with fire underneath. Fans saw her as unreachable, yet achingly familiar. Hollywood labeled her the studio's last great star. But through it all, Kim Novak never played by their rules. She refused to bleach her hair further, clashing with studio heads. She wore minimal makeup when not on screen. She skipped premieres. She rode horses alone in Big Sur instead of attending cocktail parties. She didn't flirt with the press or feed the gossip columns. To the outside world, she was mysterious, eccentric, cold even. But it wasn't coldness. It was armor. Unlike Monroe or Mansfield, Novak didn't chase fame. Fame chased her, and she kept running. And yet her image remained iconic. The cool, reserved blonde who seemed both goddess and ghost. Men adored her. Women admired her. Photographers tried to capture her. But no one really saw her. To Hollywood, she was a screen goddess. To directors, a moldable fantasy. To tabloids, a rumor worth repeating. But to herself, she was still Marilyn from Chicago. The girl who never wanted the spotlight, only peace. Before the silk gowns, the red carpets, and the trembling spotlight, Marilyn Pauline Novak was just a shy, awkward girl from the south side of Chicago. She grew up in a modest, working-class Czech-American household. Her father, a former history teacher turned freight dispatcher, was strict and distant. Her mother, a factory worker, was devout and emotionally reserved. Warmth was rare. Affection came in glances, not gestures. As a child, Kim developed scoliosis, a spinal curvature that caused her both pain and deep self-consciousness. She wore a back brace for years, hiding her body beneath oversized clothes, avoiding mirrors, and walking with her head slightly bowed, as if apologizing for taking up space. She was bullied in school for her shyness, called mousy, mute, and weird. In those early years, she learned not to trust attention. It hurt too much when it disappeared. But it was her own mind that became the most punishing voice. She developed episodes of dissociation, sometimes vanishing emotionally, even as she sat in class or stood in line at the grocery store. Her teachers called her a daydreamer. But she wasn't dreaming. She was surviving. When she turned 16, a traveling modeling scout saw her at an appliance showroom and asked her to pose with a refrigerator. The money was better than anything her parents had ever brought home. And for the first time, people looked at her not as strange, but beautiful. That recognition, though, came at a cost. Once inside the modeling world, Novak encountered the industry's darker layers. Photographers who made suggestive remarks, agents who offered advancement in exchange for silence and compliance. When she later moved to Los Angeles and began screen testing for Columbia, the same power dynamics returned. Only now, behind the veneer of movie contracts and casting couches. Studio head Harry Cohn saw in her a chance to replicate the Marilyn Monroe effect. But Novak wasn't Monroe. She didn't flirt, didn't play dumb, and refused to be molded. Cohn hated that. He referred to her cruelly as the bitch with the brains, and she paid for it. He sabotaged her roles, undercut her salary, and publicly humiliated her in meetings. But Kim refused to break. She stayed quiet. Still, impossibly poised. And then, there was the racial scandal no one in Hollywood wanted to admit. In the late 1950s, Kim fell in love with Sammy Davis Jr., a talented black singer and member of the famed Rat Pack. The relationship was passionate, real, and mutual. But America wasn't ready, and neither was Hollywood. Cohn was enraged. Rumors swirled that he used mob connections to threaten Davis, warning him to end the relationship, or face career ruin or even violence. Soon after, Davis married another woman in a hasty ceremony. Kim was left with no explanation, only silence. The pain of that betrayal didn't come from Sammy. It came from the system, a system that would rather erase love than confront its own racism. Kim never spoke publicly about the incident until decades later. And when she did, her voice cracked. Not from shame, but from the memory of powerlessness. Beneath the satin gowns and the golden curls was a woman who had been told all her life that her true self wasn't marketable, that her love was dangerous, that her silence was expected. The past she carried wasn't scandalous. It was silenced. Kim Novak didn't rise. She was crafted, carefully, cruelly, and against her own will. From the moment Columbia Pictures signed her, the transformation began. Marilyn Pauline Novak, the quiet girl with the uneven spine and distrust of attention, was buried beneath a fabricated version of herself. She was told to bleach her hair platinum, to lose weight, to speak softer. They taught her how to walk in heels that hurt, how to smile just enough to suggest innocence, but never too much to seem assertive. In the studios of 1950s Hollywood, authenticity was a liability. The studio decided that her birth name, Marilyn, was too close to Monroe, and Novak, too ethnic. But Kim insisted on keeping Novak. It was her father's name, her real name, a tiny rebellion that cost her dearly. Harry Cohn, the infamous Columbia boss, wanted her to be their Monroe. But Kim had no interest in becoming a clone. She rejected cheesecake photo shoots, refused to do nudity, and pushed back when male directors asked her to act more dumb. Instead, she created her own persona, the silent enigma. She spoke little in interviews, rarely gave quotes, dressed in neutral tones. She built a mythos not through excess, but withdrawal. And it worked. Her mystique deepened with every film. Audiences projected onto her, directors obsessed over her, and yet, no one really knew her, not even her co-stars. In Vertigo, Hitchcock turned her into a ghost in plain sight, a woman sculpted into someone else's fantasy. The irony wasn't lost on Kim. That film wasn't fiction. It was a mirror of Hollywood, of Cohn, of herself. Even as the studio system tried to control her, Kim began quietly reclaiming her life behind the curtain. She refused to live in Los Angeles. choosing instead a cottage in Big Sur surrounded by fog and seclusion. She adopted animals, painted, rode horses. She studied psychology and art. She took lovers on her own terms, some famous, some not, but she never gave the tabloids the satisfaction of a scandal. It was reinvention by resistance. While other starlets posed for gossip columns, Kim dodged photographers. While others played the game to survive, she broke the board. But survival had its price. Her refusal to conform meant fewer roles. Her defiance made her difficult. And in a system where difficulty equaled danger, she was slowly phased out. Producers stopped calling. Writers stopped writing for her. And yet, Kim never begged to stay. In 1966, she married veterinarian Richard Johnson, a quiet man far removed from the industry. For a time, she disappeared from screens entirely, building a life in Oregon where she bred llamas, painted landscapes, and found, for the first time, silence that didn't hurt. She returned occasionally for small roles, but only when she chose, never when she was summoned. Her reinvention wasn't flashy. It wasn't orchestrated through publicists or rebranding campaigns. It was raw, private, and real. She went from being the studio's ice queen to the woman who stood in her own shadow, not because she fell, but because she chose to step back. Kim Novak didn't become a myth because she played the game. She became a myth because she walked away from it. The peak came in 1958, Vertigo. She stood beneath Hitchcock's heavy lens, perfectly composed, hauntingly still, as Marilyn, a woman haunted by the ghost of another, who turned out to be herself. It was a performance so layered, so psychologically precise, that it didn't feel like acting. It felt like watching a woman quietly unravel. But at the time, the world didn't know what it was seeing. Vertigo was not an instant hit. Critics were confused, audiences lukewarm. And Hitchcock? He blamed Kim. He wanted Grace Kelly for the role, regal, refined, compliant. But Kelly had married royalty. And Kim was his second choice. He never let her forget it. On set, he treated her with icy formality, gave little direction. He didn't trust her instincts. He didn't believe in her artistry. And when the film received tepid reviews, he dismissed her entirely. But time, unlike Hollywood, tells the truth. Decades later, Vertigo would be crowned the greatest film of all time by Sight and Sound. Kim Novak's performance would be praised as ethereal, devastating, and decades ahead of its time. Still, the recognition came too late. At the very height of her visibility, Kim began to fracture inside. The pressure to maintain her image, the icy, elegant blonde, became unbearable. She suffered severe panic attacks, long bouts of depression, silent meltdowns behind closed doors. She sought therapy quietly, took tranquilizers prescribed by studio doctors, drifted further into isolation. Then came the real break. In 1960, after her critically panned performance in Strangers When We Meet, Kim realized she was being cast not for her skill, but for her aesthetic expiration date. She was only 27. The industry that had sculpted her was now eroding her. By the mid-60s, the roles stopped coming. The media, once obsessed, turned indifferent. Tabloids moved on to younger faces, bolder scandals. But Kim didn't fight to reclaim her spotlight. She let it die. While some stars scrambled for relevance, Kim chose obscurity. She moved to the countryside, bought land, raised animals. Her phone rang less and less. She stopped going to parties. She stopped pretending. But peace didn't come easily. Throughout the 70s and 80s, she battled bipolar disorder, privately. She rarely spoke of it, fearing stigma, ridicule, and the cruel lens of a media still obsessed with appearance over truth. She painted to cope, wrote poetry, hid from cameras. Then, in 1997, came another blow. A fire ripped through her Oregon home, destroying decades of art, journals, scripts, her true legacy. The loss was profound. But Kim didn't rage. She didn't cry publicly. She simply began again, and again. Even in her later years, the industry couldn't help but critique her. In 2014, at the Oscars, she appeared briefly on stage. Elegant, dignified, but visibly changed. She had undergone facial procedures, and the internet exploded in mockery. Memes, headlines, late-night jokes. Kim later wrote, "They hadn't seen me in decades, and all they could talk about was my face." It was a reminder that in Hollywood, beauty isn't just currency. It's a prison, one that ages faster than the soul inside it. Her peak, in hindsight, was never the applause or the premieres. It was the brief, impossible moment when she dared to be real in a town built on illusion. And the price? A lifetime of being misunderstood. She didn't collapse. She withdrew. Kim Novak didn't die young. She wasn't found in a bathtub. She didn't overdose or spiral into tabloid tragedy. But that doesn't mean she wasn't broken. It just means she broke in private. While the world remembered her as Marilyn from Vertigo, the real Kim lived among horses and trees, painting not for galleries, but for peace. Her art was raw, emotional, abstract. It was everything her studio image never allowed her to be. And for years, the industry forgot her. No retrospectives, no honorary Oscars, just silence. But legends don't need permission to endure. When Vertigo was finally recognized as a masterpiece, it was her face they froze in time. When directors spoke of haunting performances, it was her name that returned, whispered in reverence, not headlines. She became a symbol not of Hollywood's success, but of its cost. In interviews late in life, her voice shook, not from age, but from the weight of memory. Of things unsaid, of years lost, of love forbidden. She once said, "I didn't want to be a sex symbol. I wanted to be an artist, and I still do." And that, perhaps, is her true legacy. Not the films, not the fame, but the woman who walked away before they could take everything. In the end, Kim Novak didn't fade. She transformed, from icon to warning, from muse to mystery, from Hollywood's illusion to her own truth.